Hello, everyone. My name is Jordyn Smith, and I am the voice and the astrologer behind this YouTube channel, Nonconformist Conscience. I want to put it out there that my Gemini birthday special is still going on until the 20th. And on the 20th, it'll switch over to Cancers. So it will be your turn then for your birthday special. That's really all the updates I have at this moment. So let's dive into your new moon forecast for this week. We have a new moon in the sign of Gemini occurring tomorrow on the 6th, and it is ruled by Mercury that has now entered into the sign of Gemini as well. So we now have 5 planets in, well, when the new moon occurs, we will have 5 planets in the sign of Gemini. So let's break down this new moon because I feel that it is a really powerful new moon. We have been working, and the astrology has been reflecting this. And if you follow this YouTube channel, then you understand that there's been a lot where we are gleaning a lot of insight about ourselves through the last few months. And now this is just another step on this evolutionary journey that is now taking us out of the grounding sign of Taurus, where it's earthy and yin energy, where we're meant to ground into ourselves, into our relationship to self, into our own values and needs. And now everything is starting to shift, and hence Venus moving into the sign of Gemini. Jupiter is now in the sign of Gemini. It's really important to talk about all of this as it correlates to this new moon, especially since Venus is conjunct this new moon. And Venus is also the ruler of that south node in Libra and also Uranus and Taurus. So let's talk about this. A new moon speaks to a 6-month cycle of new emotional dynamics being birthed into the consciousness in order to be utilized and worked on. And Gemini is the sign of where we collect and gather information and data. It can spark ideas in tandem with Uranus. Aquarius energy, which Pluto is trine to Jupiter and Mercury during this new moon as well. But Gemini is also about how we communicate. It is how we express ourselves. Someone with a Gemini moon could be a natural communicator, verbally, could be really insightful, can help other people feel comfortable about expressing themselves and communicating what's going on an emotional level as well. But also Gemini can be the sign of where we have nonverbal communication. That's why so often we have people who have a Gemini moon who end up being people who paint, or they utilize their hands, seeing as Gemini rules the hands. So this new moon is really speaking about how we express ourselves, how we express our emotions. The moon in Gemini, is it nonverbal or is it verbal? Are you able to feel secure in the ways in which you communicate what it is that you're feeling and your own emotional dynamics? For some people, this can really be bringing to the forefront of where there are limitations around this. And for others, it's where they can feel like they have really started to understand how to now outwardly communicate, seeing as all of this energy from Taurus has now moved into the sign of Gemini. What we were gleaning on a personal level about ourselves now can now want to be communicated with others. This is really seen as well with the moon conjunct Venus, and it's in a balsamic conjunction as a new moon is occurring. So Venus being the ruler of the South Node in Libra, which this Libra South Node is trine to the new moon and to Venus, its ruler. This can be an opportunity for us to really start to understand how we want to communicate with those around us. Whatever we've been learning about ourselves on an internal level within the sign of Taurus is now wanting to be outwardly expressed. For some people, this can be where they're needing to have conversations with other people. This also is really indicative of lessons in learning how to listen to where another is coming from, seen with that South Node of Libra trine, the new moon, and Venus. Is there some type of old pattern of communication that is wanting to dissolve? That is really emphasized with this new moon in a balsamic conjunction with Venus. The old ways in which we communicated maybe are not the ways in which feel authentic to us anymore. And that's seen with Jupiter and Mercury and this new phase conjunction as well during this new moon. Pluto trining Jupiter and Mercury at the time of this new moon is also really indicative of our objective awareness that can come to the forefront, especially revolving around what we've been learning about ourselves, seeing as Uranus is in Taurus and is the ruler of that Pluto. Where it is that we have become stuck in certain types of communication, ways we communicate ourselves are the ways that we express ourselves. And now with that conjunction between Mercury and Jupiter, the need to now birth an expansive process in how we are choosing to communicate with others. Again, when we put Gemini and Libra in the mix, considering that there's this trine going on between the South lunar node and Libra to Venus and the new moon, this can be where we really understand that there's unity and diversity. If we are honing our listening skills, Libra, and able to listen to where another is coming from and not where we think that they should be coming from, but truly listening, because that's a form of communication, right? In order to be able to communicate what it is that we need to communicate, we need to also be able to hear where another is coming from, and vice versa. That will give us a lot of information about, should boundaries be put in place here? Does this person have the ability to hear where I'm coming from? Or are they projecting onto me where they think that I should be coming from? The whole dynamic of there's unity and diversity is really indicative of the South Node in Libra, the unity part, and then the diversification is that natural trine from Libra to Gemini. This is kind of doubled down during this new moon because that Jupiter Mercury conjunction that's occurring, and Mercury being the ruler of the new moon and Venus. This is where we can really understand the beauty in the law of relativity. What may be true for me isn't necessarily someone else's experience. And so going into conversations and really honing our listening skills as a way to see the beauty in the diversity, and that there is unification within that through the law of relativity. It's why I so often say that there's more than one way to get to Denny's, right? Like, we can't force our opinion down someone's throat, because an opinion is not a fact. An opinion is just an opinion. And so there can be a dynamic with this new moon where we get to see how in the past our opinions might have been limited through our beliefs. Mercury conjunct Jupiter and the sign of Gemini, and the need to really liberate from that dynamic, seen with the trine from Pluto to that Mercury Jupiter conjunction. That in order to be able to naturally express ourselves in a healthy and beneficial way, that we have to be willing to hear where another is coming from and not try to shove our opinion down someone's throat, that there's beauty in someone else's different perspective. And so that's really helping us to expand upon our inner knowledge and our inner awareness, and helps us to communicate in healthier and brand new ways that are wanting to be birthed. And again, this is really seen with South Node in Libra, trining the moon and Venus, albeit Venus and the moon are in a balsamic conjunction. So it's speaking to, there's something here that's old that's wanting to culminate, but also a lot of timeless information that can be gleaned from going inward and understanding what this is about, and utilizing that Pluto trine this new moon's ruler, Mercury, which is conjunct Jupiter, as a way to have objectification about what really is wanting to be released here and what is wanting to expand. Aquarius, so often we hear about how it is the site of liberation and rebelliousness and the avant-garde and eccentric, like, being eccentric. But it's also about our lifestyle. And we can see that a lot of us have been having a profound change within how we live. It's a lifestyle change. This is really seen with the ruler of Pluto being in Taurus, that our values have been transforming, and that creates a lifestyle change. So now we're needing to take this, what we've been learning, as a way to hone our listening skills and the ways in which we express ourselves. Saturn in the sign of Pisces is square this new moon and Venus. So it can really, I've talked about this since Saturn entered the sign of Pisces, but Saturn in Pisces is where we're restructuring our consciousness. And one of the ways in which we're meant to restructure our consciousness is in regard to the information that we take in, and choosing what it is that we need to take in and omitting other things. But it's also about, as we've been doing this work of deconditioning, that can be where, through this square from the new moon to Saturn and Pisces, where we're deconditioning from the patterns and the ways in which we learned how to communicate and how to hear where another was coming from in the past. We could have had old wounds around not being heard or wounding others in that regard as well. And Saturn and Pisces in this square to the new moon and Venus really indicates that certain dynamics that have been crystallized within around our knowledge and our communication skills could really be, what is the word I'm looking for? Exposed. Pisces can expose something because it's part of the natural water triad. So this Saturn and Pisces squaring this can really help to expose where and what we're needing to eliminate and how we communicate with others and our thinking, while also helping us to really tap into the emotional dynamic. Because here's the thing with Gemini is, it is a mutable sign. It means that this is a new moon that helps us to be adaptable, right? In our communication and how we express and how we listen to others and how we put ourselves out there in an authentic way through everything that we've been learning about ourselves. But it's also here where we can really understand the wisdom of, maybe in the past I didn't communicate something that in an authentic way, and I have regrets about it. And Saturn and Pisces in this square really helps us to self-reflect on, how do I want to communicate this? Or where did my communication skills come from? What here needs to be restructured? What is overly crystallized? Am I stuck in my own ways within my own thinking? And the mutability of this, really, these are both mutable signs, Pisces and Gemini. they can help us to be able to adapt, especially whenever we're in conversation with someone else. It can really help us be like, oh, wait a second, I am being triggered and I don't want to communicate in the way that I've communicated in the past because I know that it's not beneficial. This is also a new moon that can bring and shed light on, are you someone who has a hard time expressing themselves? There's a natural square between Virgo and Gemini. And this is where we can experience feeling like we could be persecuted or judged by others through expressing our emotions. And here's the thing, with that trine from the lunar south node in Libra to this new moon in Venus, if you have something come up where you're needing to express and communicate something to someone else and you are judged for it, that's going to help you know a Libra lesson of that person's not willing to hear where I'm coming from, and also that maybe this isn't the right person to be expressing this to. There's a lesson with the South Node and Libra of discerning whom to share with and whom to receive from. So this can really help us to hone in on this type of discerning quality that all of us really should have in a natural way. So the other dynamic that I do want to share about this is that Pallas Athene is opposing Uranus. Pallas is ruled by Pluto. Pluto is the ruler of that. Pluto is ruled by that Uranus. So Pallas Athene in the sign of Scorpio is really helping us get into our own emotional and psychological natures and really transforming. It's an octave transformer between Uranus and Mercury. So the knowledge that we're taking in that's helping us to explore our own emotional and psychological dynamics can really birth deep insight into our old communication patterns. And with Pallas Athene opposing Uranus in the sign of Taurus, this can be where we understand now what does need to be thrown off. Where is our own internal status quo revolving around these dynamics that the new moon is speaking to and really helping us liberate from some of these prior dynamics? This can also be where, how do you communicate with yourself, seeing as Uranus is in Taurus, ruled by Mercury and Gemini? Are you critical of yourself? Why? How do you talk to yourself? What is the internal process? Are you hypercritical and judgmental of yourself? This can really help you understand and get to the bottom of the psychology of all of this around the beliefs that have shaped this dynamic. And with Pluto ruling Pallas and trying that Jupiter and Mercury, really help you liberate from some of these old learned ways of thinking and old beliefs that have affected sense of self, sense of security, the ability to be self-reliant, the self-esteem. So the other dynamic that I want to speak to is that Cassandra is, still at 6 degrees Aquarius, ruled by that Uranus, but Cassandra is in a trine to Mercury. And it is a first quarter trine. And so this can really reflect where old trauma from utilizing our voice, the Cassandra kind of complexes around where we've shared information that has challenged other people's security. And maybe we were scapegoated or ostracized or were made to feel guilt for it. This can be really highlighted in order to birth new insight into how one needs to recover their voice. And that is seen through this trine from Cassandra to Mercury. And then this is also doubled down by Venus, not only conjunct this new moon, but the new moon and Venus are conjunct the north node of Venus right now. So I want to show this to you all. That way you can see what I am speaking to, and it's not just my words. So if you look here where my mouse is, Cassandra is in a trine to Mercury. Oops. To Mercury. And Venus here and the new moon are conjunct. And right here is Venus's north node. So there's a sense of recovering one's own inner knowledge and inner voice in order to outwardly express and communicate in a way that creates more self-reliance and healthier self-esteem. Something else I do want to speak to is with Jupiter conjunct the ruler of this new moon, Mercury. I'm going to stop this share. Jupiter is our right brain. Mercury is linear logic. Gemini is Mercury ruled, it is the logical linear mind. And then Jupiter is the ruler of Sag. Jupiter's polarity point right now is Sag, and Lilith, the asteroid, is at 0 degrees Sagittarius and also sextile to Pluto in a last quarter phase sextile. And to me, it really is amping up the dynamic of knowing what is true is not a Gemini function. It can't be empirical. It can only be known through the intuitive function. And this is really indicated with Jupiter in Gemini, with it ruling Lilith at this time, and Lilith is sextile to Pluto. It's really bringing in deep, profound insight into what is true for each one of us individually. And then it also speaks to that relativity of truth dynamic that could be occurring for some of us right now. So there can be this need where we're needing to really tap into what feels true and authentic for each one of us at this moment in time, as a way to then start to take in and expand our knowledge around what feels authentic, right? And to throw out the rest for now, because Gemini can want to collect lots and lots of information, and then it can become frustrated when there's too many conflicting opinions. And that's why Jupiter is the ruler of Lilith right now. It's to really help foster and fortify this dynamic of tapping into our intuition and understanding on a very deep level what actually is true for each one of us. All right. And then the other thing I wanted to speak to is that Vesta and Chiron are in a square to each other during this new moon. This new moon is how do you communicate your emotions? Are you secure in the way that you communicate it, or are you afraid of communicating how you feel and what's emotionally going on with you? Vesta square to Chiron, and this dynamic and Vesta being ruled by this new moon, seeing as it's in the sign of Cancer, is very much about devoting ourselves and keeping that inner sacred flame alive, of exploring our emotional dynamics. And with the square to Chiron and Aries, where do you feel and why do you feel scared? Where did that wounding come from? Where maybe you don't feel like you can express yourself in a natural way and to have the conversations. Maybe you felt like you needed to prove yourself, so maybe you abandoned yourself in the past. Or maybe you had a parent who didn't communicate. Maybe they were oppressive and didn't want you to feel. Maybe you had a parent who wasn't a good communicator and was always projecting their own stuff and creating trauma and wounding through their own words. And so this new moon can really bring up where we feel afraid to communicate, or also where we find a strength in our ability to communicate. Gemini it's naturally square to Pisces. This is where nonverbal communication comes in. Are you someone who needs to have a more spiritual experience with their emotional dynamics and is wanting to communicate them in a different way because it feels more authentic and true for you? There's nothing wrong with that. Pick up a paintbrush, start to journal, sit out in nature. Venus square Chiron is saying it doesn't matter the form in which that you're choosing to express yourself, but a lot of healing around old wounds can happen if you are courageous in exploring these dynamics. Mars being the ruler of the North Node and Chiron is really speaking to, with this new moon, we're wanting to create new patterns. We're desiring to create new patterns in the ways in which we take information in and what we're understanding about our intuition and what feels true for us, and understanding how we want to communicate with others, or new patterns in how we want to listen, and also new patterns and really liberating from the expectations of others. And so there can be lessons where we're communicating something to someone in some way, shape, or form, and then we are being met with the truth of the reality of the situation, whether it's positive or negative. Anything can be 100% positive and something else can be 100% negative. But really, this dynamic with this new moon is teaching. It's about learning, right? It's Gemini. We're learning something revolving around the ways in which we express ourselves. This can also be where, seeing as Venus is the ruler of that South Node and it's trying, lots of new people could be coming into your life right now and having, communicating, especially if you're wanting to date. This is where Saturn square to this is wanting us to have discernment and to make correct judgment through self-reflecting of the past. Are there red flags? That's like a great buzzword right now. Are there red flags that you're seeing? Are you denying them and wanting to only see the best, or can you truly make a discerning choice in regards to this? Because there could be multiple choices with work, with family, with friends, with any type of relationship. And with Saturn square to this new moon and Venus, this could be where our souls are testing us. Have you truly changed? Has your consciousness changed? Are you being sent a test to do something different, to make correct judgment call, to discern through reflecting on where you made incorrect judgment in the past? Are you able to communicate what it is that you need to communicate at this time? Are you giving yourself an outlet to express yourself so you can explore your emotions? What wounds are coming up? Are they around speaking? This will be a 6-month period of where we are learning and discovering about these types of dynamics. So I wanted to speak to this. At the end of the week, I will jump back on here and I will talk about Mars entering the sign of Taurus, and I will do a video on that. For now, I just wanted to do a video on this new moon and a little bit about the Saturn square. I will say on the 8th, Venus and Saturn will square in perfection. This really has the ability to expose different dynamics of where we've had ideals around our relationships and now needing to make different choices. There could be the duality of choice indicated with this. And then on the 9th, the sun will square Saturn as well. And this can really illuminate these dynamics of where our thinking has become crystallized and the need to dissolve some of these dynamics as a form of culmination. So this is your new moon, and I hope I hear from more of you. I can't wait to see more of you Geminis in my practice. I've had an immense amount of fun connecting with you all. I had a feeling that great conversation and questions would be asked. I love the inquisitiveness of most Geminis, not all of them, but most of them. And I've really felt like I've gotten to understand Gemini even more from seeing each one of you. So thank you. I really appreciate that. Until later on this week, I will see you all later, and happy new moon.